Alright, here we are. Getting ready to do our lower ball joint on our 98 Corolla. This is a front lower ball joint. Basically, what happened was we had some issues with rust, and basically we're going to skip the part about taking the cotter pins out, which is definitely an important step. It'll help to use the dikes to basically use a prying motion to pull them out. And but we don't want to waste time showing all of the effort it took to get out these rusted pins, so we're gonna move along. Let's see, underneath the pin on the axle there's a cap. We're gonna set that aside. Actually, I'm gonna take the brakes off to get those out of the way. I'm just gonna take the whole assembly off by removing the 17mm bolts that are in the back here that hold the brake bracket and the caliper on. If I had a deep side, that probably would work, but there we go. You might have to use a breaker bar or air power, because these are actually not on too tight because, well, I've already removed them. And so I'm just doing this by hand. Let's see. The other one down below. Don't forget, there's a 14mm bolt right here before you go and remove the assembly. Take that bolt off, because what I'm going to do is just take everything and hang it up on the strut assembly. You can use a wire, zip tie, something like that. And that's a 14mm head on that one. Okay, so we got our two 17s out, 17mm head bolts, and let's use a zip tie, let's see there, to hang it up out of the way, so we don't need to deal with this anymore. Then let's see, we can get rid of our rotor. We also don't need to deal with that. And let's see, we need to get this 30mm nut loose. I don't have a microphone. Are we not using it? There we go. So then you can see that can move out now. So we're going to pull the knuckle off as an assembly. I'm going to turn the steering wheel back so we can see back here to get the tie rod. Let's see, that one is a 17. We also already pulled the cotter pin out of here. That one also was a little bit of trouble with the rust problem. Let's see. So once that's off, you can use a small little ball joint puller tool. You just want to center it on the bolt there. Find a spot where it'll apply even pressure. And then let's see, this one happens to have a 19mm bolt is on this one. There we go. So that one came out pretty easily because I already removed it, like I mentioned, but you might have to give it a little force. You might even have to bang it with a hammer right there to jar it loose. There we go. We'll set that off to the side. And then down below we have 3 bolts there, which actually I think are already loose. So these are 17s down here. There's 2 bolts. And there is, yeah, did I say 2 nuts? 2 nuts and 1 bolt. And these ones are probably going to be on there pretty good. These ones were a little bit rusted. And, but with an impact gun, you have easy access under here. It's not too bad. Alright, so now the lower ball joint is detached from the lower control arm. And then I'm going to go ahead and unbolt the strut at the bottom here. It's a 19 millimeter nut and bolt we have here. So I'm going to hold the bolt with the wrench and loosen the nut with the impact gun. So we'll slide those out. So now that everything's free, we can basically just take this whole assembly out, slide the axle back, and there we go. Now we got our knuckle, and we can get our lower ball joint disconnected right here. So here we go. This is a 19 millimeter nut right here. Once you get the pin out, which this was the worst one when it came to the rust, it took a while, but with a little bit of help from some rust penetrator and a torch, and finally got it out. And then the nut itself wasn't fun either. It's not torqued on that tight, but with the rust it was some trouble. I just took a, it's probably be loud in the video, isn't it? So then I knocked it loose like that with a hammer, and then of course it wasn't this easy the first time, because now I got anti-seize on there for the future. So once you get the nut out, you can go and use one of these large pullers, which is actually supposed to be like a pitman arm puller, but it's a good size for this ball joint here. And then a 19 millimeter wrench works on that. And just, oh, there we go. Same way that you get the tie rod end out, you can get the lower ball joint out. Same thing if you have trouble, if you're having to crank on it really hard, you can bang on the side with a hammer to jar it loose. This one wasn't too bad. So this is the actual lower ball joint. And this one is actually not bad, but when they get a lot of play in them, when they're really loose and sloppy, they can cause a problem. So let's see. Now we gotta put it back, which is the reverse of the removal. Okay. So I'm just trying to put it back together, torque the nut, and line up the hole so I can get the cotter pin in. So now I see the hole lined up. Okay, so I'm gonna just try to get this all in one motion, which shouldn't be too hard. Just want to get the axle. There's a bunch of grease on here because I added some grease, so it's gonna dry. But get the axle in there at the same time. There we go. I got the ball joint to drop in, and then you can get the knuckle to slide into the strut assembly, and then get it to stay in place with the bolt. Get the other bolt in, and then you can get your hardware on down at the bottom here under the ball joint. Then we got our nut for the axle. There we go. And be careful when you're putting the axle back in to not damage the seal inside. And then let's see. Okay, then we got our tie rod in. There we go. Alright, so tighten everything down to spec. On the castle nuts where you need to put a pin, you're going to need to probably adjust it a little bit to get the pin to line up. And then let's see, go and put our brakes back together. And one thing you can do to hold the rotor in place, just use an axe, a lug nut. And when you put your axle back on, don't forget to put the cap on it. And then you're probably going to have to rotate a little to get that to line up as well, so you can put your cotter pin in. And let's see, now we'll put our caliper back in place. And you just want to carefully, you can carefully slide it over the rotor. And then it might be a little tricky to see in the back, but it can, gotta line it up here. Get the bolts in. Okay, so once we got that torqued down, of course we'll, I'm gonna put this bracket back with a little 14mm head bolt, and then we'll put our wheel on, carefully lower the vehicle, torque the wheel, and we'll be all done.